Tiny side step to the left.
Nasty.
Right. I knocked this down from over there before I was filming. It's a Ganondorf, pretty good. Yeah. Exactly where I need it to be. Hello everyone, it's me, James Stephanie Sterling. I'm wearing a mask today because I was out late last night and can't be bothered to fix my makeup. Seriously, I look like I was fucked behind the bushes. By the bushes. Oh god, it's really bad in here. Fuck! Anyway, I have this. That's for today's show and tell. A plush Tamagotchi that turns inside out. Ugh. 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 Anyway, today's episode is about how I'm right and should be taken seriously as a pundit and expert.
Size does matter.
This graphic represents a turning point in the history of video games as a business. Outside of the video series you're watching now, it's rarely seen anymore, despite the significant distaste it rightfully earned when the public first ever saw it. Though gaming culture has largely forgotten this image, I never have, because its significance is underrated but should never be underestimated. Published by Ubisoft in the mid-2010s, this image represents the answer every desperate profiteer has been looking for, the ultimate get-richer-quicker scheme that makes real the corporate lie of eternal financial growth. It's the game as a service, and as the graphic plainly shows, it's a perfect circle. The perfect circle, designed to spin until the end of time and generate its promised recurrent profit forever. It is, in all its fiendish brilliance, the Ouroboros of avarice. It's also a fantasy. A short-sighted, naive, fucking stupid fantasy that deluded corpos readily swallowed as they jumped aboard the gravy train that would be known as the live service.
Nasty.
Corporations operate by perpetuating a stupid myth of rapid growth that grows forever to keep their self-entitled investors hooked on the line. But with live services, it was the publishers taking the bait. Truly believing that live services were the perfect circle of recurrent profit, they flooded the market with online games that traded a complete experience for an open-ended and unfinished structure, one promising constant content built on grinding and fueled by DLC, microtransactions, battle passes, and other sources of so-called recurrent revenue. So how is that flood doing? Has the perfect circle continued to spin, or has it fallen off like the wheel of a cartoon jalopy? I'll give you a hint. I was completely 100% in the fucking right years ago when I said the live service gold rush was fucking unsustainable and built on a fallacious reverie. In other words, all aboard the knackered jalopy. The game industry was rocked, for want of a more accurately descriptively underwhelming term, by the news that multiple live service games were given the axe in a single week. The death toll is quite large and seemingly in progress, with a list that includes Apex Legends Mobile, Battlefield Mobile, Crime Site, Crossfire X, Echo VR, Knockout City, and Rumbleverse. That's quite a toll, and remember, this is just the past week. Crime Site. All these shutdowns follow a veritable killing spree that Square Enix has been on and that we've covered more than once this year already. Oh, and don't worry, Square Enix got in on the fun this week too, sending some fucking Dragon Quest spin-off or other to the same cemetery housing. Babylon's Fall, Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier, Bravely Default Mobile, Chocobo GP, and the service side of Marvel's Avengers. Square Enix, the Netflix of gaming, strikes again. This epidemic of live live service shutdown certainly put Square Enix's recent behaviour into perspective. A few videos back I theorised that perhaps Square had figured out that jizzing live services over everybody's faces hadn't quite worked the way it hoped, and it was jettisoning all the failed attempts to ride the gravy train. It seems this is a likely situation as service after service is served its notice. As with most of the Square games, some of these services couldn't even last a year, such as Apex Legends Mobile, which won't be refunding any microtransaction purchases because EA are cunts. Battlefield Mobile didn't even make it to completion, going limp during the testing phase in a case of premature extermination. While it will remain playable online and might not fit the strictest definition of a service game, Turtle Rock announced there'll be no more content for Back 4 Blood, the rather tepid Left 4 Dead clone that launched in 2021. Some have added this to the service body count, but hey, it got 3 expansions, which is more than we can say for all the failures that promised years of constant support. Rumbleverse was, by all accounts, a genuine shame, earning way more attention than most of these other service games following its announcement that it was ending, and that dramatically, every purchase players had made was being refunded. I've been told Rumbleverse was good, a well-made battle royale brawler that deserved a longer life. I wouldn't know. I hadn't heard of it until it closed. And that's the thing, isn't it? I literally cover the game industry, and Rumbleverse's existence passed me by, as did the existence of practically every game shuttered this week, most of which gained more fame in death than life. Granted, I might not follow as closely as I used to because, according to much of the internet over this past weekend, I hate video games and shouldn't review them anymore, but even so, I've neither the capacity nor inclination to keep up with the mass of battle royales, looter shooters, and mobile slop that spreads like the Martian's red weed in pursuit of that perfect circle. Because, like I told you earlier, I told you so. I said, back when live services were just starting to become trendy, that filling the marketplace with services that required dedications, devotions even, of time and money were a bad idea. Back in 2016 I issued this warning, and once again, none of these dummies listened to the Cassandra of video games. Say what you will about my qualifications to review a Dead Space remake, but when it comes to predicting the trajectory of gaming market trends, I've never once failed to accurately call my shots. And as I try to stress every time, it's not because I'm clever or blessed with preternatural foresight. I'm just a dum-dum with perfect skin and a great rack. No, I merely think about things for more than a few seconds. Just long enough to see the obvious end result of plans built on the kind of logic you'd find at Wacky Land. Live services are, by design, massive time sinks. Their gameplay loops are structured to create addicted players, and player progress is slow to a grinding crawl in order to keep players in their game ecosystems as long as possible, which will of course let them sell time-skipping microtransactions. The job-like nature of this interminable grind is further emphasised by login bonuses, as well as daily and weekly challenges to entice the audience back every day for as long as possible. Time limits are another favoured tactic. Stuff like temporary XP boosts or in-game events are a great way to ensure players stick around or risk losing out on rewards, a philosophy carried over into the seasonal nature of battle passes. Keep playing, keep logging in, keep grinding, keep engaging, even if it's just for the sake of engagement, and, of course, keep spending. All this is to say that a service game is a job, a time sink, an attention-dominating locus of hyperfocus. You see the problem, right? Of course you do. Even a dum-dum with perfect skin and a great rack can see the problem with dozens and dozens of job-like games utterly saturating the market. See, the fantasy of live services generating infinite revenue only works if you forget that the audience's time and money is not infinite. I was right years ago when I said a gold rush of games demanding everyone's finite time and money was stupid. The live service craze flooded the market with full-time grinding, and companies expected to roll in the perpetual profit. Even a fucking imbecile could tell you that there are only 24 hours in a day, and that most people don't even have a fraction fraction of that time to play games. This is getting more and more true as folks are overworked and underpaid to an extreme degree, all while the CEOs responsible for exhausting and disenfranchising their employees wonder why nobody's buying enough of their unaffordable electronics anymore. It's almost like these wealthy assholes were fucking morons and not job-creating geniuses the whole time, huh? There aren't enough players to go around, not enough time in the day for an entire industry of games as services, but the fucking morons in charge were too drunk on the promise of Ubisoft's Ouroboros. There was only ever room for a handful of successful service games. It's logistically, physically impossible to sustain more than that, but nobody ever considered how unsustainable it was, even as I yelled from the rooftops that it was literally, obviously unsustainable. Market saturation is a huge issue for games that aren't daily grind fests, let alone ones that are. And it's not like we haven't already been here. The live service graveyard overlooks a mass grave of MMOs that thought they too could ride the circle. Time and time again, we've seen the result of companies thinking they'll replicate the success of a game if they replicate the game itself. And they're surprised every single time that real life doesn't actually fucking work that way. You're not guaranteed Fortnite money if you pitifully copy Fortnite and expect to be rich. Just ask Radical Heights. Oh wait, you can't. Because it fucking died. It died on arrival and rotted in embarrassment and should have served as one of dozens of teachable moments for the game industry, but taught fuck all because the game industry refuses to ever learn a fucking thing. I can't help thinking back to what we talked about when Marvel's Avengers detonated its roadmap. Thinking of that time Square Enix said its HD game releases would have been profitable in 2020 if it wasn't for that live service albatross, if they just stuck to massively popular single-player games like Final Fantasy Remake. It's funny. Corporations are destructively risk-averse these days, as desperation to uphold the lie of perpetual growth has reached a critical breaking point. And yet, they're too fucking blinded by that self-same desperation to see that their perfect circles, their guarantees of easy recurrent revenue, are the real risk. We've seen time and time again that publishers, like the black holes of object permanence they are, have been consistently surprised at the success of their single-player storytelling games. Remember how shocked EA was that Jedi Fallen Order did well for them? When game makers make games, people who play games play them. Of course, not every game is a guaranteed success, but it's more dependable than committing to massively expensive online services that promise years of support and require 24/7 oversight to keep running. Why not ask Anthem? Oh, wait. Live services are so much fucking work to make and maintain. But they never think about that, because they're dumb. Just sell games, you sellers of games. It's what made y'all rich in the first place, but you explicitly want to forget that, don't you? You want to forget that because dependable income isn't enough when you've promised your shareholders the world and you've run out of world to carve up. You'll just keep chasing perfect circles, as you have done for years, chasing and not looking where you're going. I was right about live services, as I was right about all the previous short-sighted trends. I always am. Not because I'm smart, but because I'm just that tad bit smarter than the dumbasses chasing their perfect circles over the edge of a goddamn cliff.
It's fucking grotesque. Anyway, that really is all I've got for you today, for this week's episode. It was just a victory lap. The topic was going to be something else, but then all of those closures happened, and it was just the perfect time to remind you that once again, I called it. That's the point. It's always the point. I've got my... Speaking of point, I just put my fingerprints on the glass. Fucking hell, it's bad enough the kids do it. Anyway, I'm going, because I'm right. God damn it. Fuck. Thank God for me. You can all go now. I can't even see in this fucking thing.